Hi guys, as promised, long awaited and hopefully from you, highly anticipated interview with a very good friend of mine. We're giving you tips on how to get started in the model industry, what to be prepared for, what to be aware of, a lot of financial tips on how to get started. We sat here for 2 hours. And when we were editing, there was so much good information. I didn't really want to cut anything out. So this has turned into a 3-part series. Let's get started with part 1. Hi guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to the very first episode of On the Sofa with Macon. I have a special guest today. I've invited her because she's made a similar journey as I have in becoming an international model and transporting herself out of the country and out of the city she was, where she was born and raised. And I'd like to welcome, without further ado, beautiful model and friend of mine, Miss Lee Simon. I'd like to welcome my beautiful friend Lee.
Thank you, Macon, for having me as a guest. Your first guest, apparently.
Yeah, my first guest.
Oh my gosh,
episode.
what have I got myself into?
Yeah, I know. Just wait.
Scared.
Okay, the first thing I want to do is introduce you a little bit. Lee and I met. I had done jobs in Munich before when I was still living in Berlin, but the first modeling job, we did that fashion show. Remember
we were in Augsburg.
No, we weren't in Augsburg. It was here in Munich.
Okay.
And remember, they had that small, narrow runway, and then it had water on the side, but the water was flowing over the stage.
You're taking me back.
Yeah, it was the very first
Was that
job.
our first?
That was our first job when we met each other. And then was the first
that
job.
That was years ago.
Yeah, it was like
years ago.
It was like 14 years ago. 14 years ago, because I've been 14 years in Munich. And that was the first job I did after I moved to Munich.
Okay.
And I just remember remember it was somewhere on the other side of the river and everything.
It's sort of coming back, but I can't even, somehow I just forgot. That one's sort of not even clear in my mind, but I totally believe you.
I just remember thinking, oh my God, don't let me, because I wear contact lenses and I have astigmatism, but of course I don't wear them when I work because the makeup and everything. I was like, just don't make, and I have sometimes problem with depth perception. I was like, please don't let me step off of this runway and I fall in the water or slip in the water and everything.
It's sort of vaguely coming back. So, okay, that was our first one. And I definitely remember the Augsburg one because we were in a big group and we had to travel there and stuff like that. But that one's also years ago. But yeah, we've known each other for a long, long time.
Exactly. And actually, when I met you, it was one of your first trips to Munich. And it was a time that you had to, when you first came here, you would model a couple of months and then you have to go back.
Yeah, my visa restriction was a bit different at the time. And now I am a permanent resident here. But at the time I had a work visa, but I could only be in Europe for 3 months at a time. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's start with that because let's explain. Where do you come from? Where are you born and raised, my love?
So just a short introduction. I'm South African. I'm from a very, very small town in South Africa, practically in the center of South Africa. It's called Beaufort West. So imagine a farm town or any outback town that's in the middle of nowhere. That's where I'm from. And I moved to Cape Town to study, and eventually, somewhere along my journey after university, I sort of started modeling.
Okay, so you didn't start modeling until you were finished with university.
Yeah, it was basically what happened was I was in my honors year and my mom basically saw an ad for a new agency, and me and my sisters had always been sort of approached, or a lot of people were asking us, oh my gosh, are you guys models? Because all three of us are very tall and, quite striking features. And, we laughed it off. My mom obviously thought it was a huge compliment, and she herself had done a little bit of modeling, even though, unfortunately, because of the era she was born in, not as successfully as we could. But yeah, and then she saw an ad in the paper, and I had, like I said, some time on my hands because I was doing my honors at the time. And I thought, why not? I'll give it a go. And you could say the rest is history. I basically said yes to life. I went to the casting call. And yeah, that's where it all started.
Okay, so your mother helped you also get into the business.
Yes.
It's a little bit of my story too. I was pretty much a very, very skinny kid all my life, but at average height.
Yeah.
And then I had I wouldn't say a horrible, but I had a very unexpected and very fast growth spurt between 11 and 13.
Yeah.
And I basically went from a normal sized child to being this the tallest, longest, lankiest thing, taller than all the little boys. Basically, I am the same height I am now as I was with 12 and a half and 13. And all of a sudden, you get a little shy, you get a little self-conscious and shoulders.
The boys only reach that growth spurt when they're like, some of them 15, 16. And the little girls, I think we have that growth spurt a lot
and
earlier.
especially if it's in your genes to be taller. So my mother and my father are the shortest ones in their families, but all their siblings are tall.
Oh, okay.
So it skipped my parents one generation, and then it hit me. So basically, I grew maybe another inch after high school, but basically since I was 13, I've been 5'8".
Yep.
And that's a lot for a 12-year-old to be 5'8", and you look over everybody, and then everything got long and skinny.
Yeah,
I still have chicken arms and everything.
Chicken legs. Chicken legs.
And everything. So my mother had actually studied to be a fashion designer. She had always worked a little bit she always worked a little bit in the business. And she felt like she also, people were always speaking to her, hey, your daughter started modeling and everything. And I started doing a little bit of child acting, had already done a few commercials and everything. So my mother realized that my self-esteem was going down. I was a little ashamed of my height. I was being teased.
You know, you sort of like, I mean, I think a lot of tall girls do that. You sort of shrink yourself to fit in.
Yeah, you shrink yourself. She was always going in. I know you got a black mama too. Did she go in with your knuckles in the back? My mother would be like, twist between my shoulder blades. Stand up, girl.
The books on the head type of thing, because my mom was like, no. I mean, she started realizing that, like, in some ways, I did it more so than my sisters, but she said, like, everyone has to have good posture. So we did the walk in the hallway with the books on our heads.
Hey, she's standing up straight. Yeah. I like it. Yes, go ahead. That's it. That's it. I love it so much.
No, my mom would get her knuckles. She'd pinch me right between my shoulder blades. Snap up straight, girl.
Or she'd give you a pat, like my mom was like.
No, my mom would pinch the middle of my shoulder blades, like stop slouching.
Everywhere is the same. Mom is everywhere the same.
So she thought I would win a little bit of confidence being on the runway and everything. And that was a time when models were basically broken down. Either you were a runway model, you were a photo model, or you were a commercial model and everything. And I just had this big ass head of hair, and I basically looked like a black Q-tip. So my mother started doing some connections of hers and everything, started getting me on small little runways and everything, and then I started liking it. I was like, I'm not bad on the runway. And then, but my parents were very strict on school, and not that I quit school early.
My mom as well. I think the most important thing that they said is like, finish your education. I mean, like I said, I was a bit of a late starter in the industry anyway. I did go to university, and I was more or less sort of towards the end of my studies. But you know, I didn't let that stop me, and I do think it's a good thing for girls nowadays, or for women in general, to get an education and just to focus on certain things. Modeling you can always do as a hobby or start off as a hobby. Like, I guess for us, it also started as a hobby and just became our job.
Exactly, because I also did that. I was only allowed to work in the summers when I had free, and at that time we weren't living in New York. My grandfather lived in New York, and like 3 of her sisters and her brother. So I was allowed to go up there. So I had protection of the family, and I could work in New York on in the summers. And then when it was time to go to college, my father also told me, he's like, I can see you being successful as a model if that's your dream. I'm ready to pay for you for a year. You go off to Europe, travel Europe. I'd rather you do that before you start university, and you all of a sudden get disinterested in your studies and want to go modeling, and then you've wasted the money and everything like that. But I did want to live the college experience with my friends and everything, so I did that first. I was also like 21, so I was also a late starter. When you think a lot of the girls are 15 or 16.
Do you think you regret that? Do you think
Not
that's
really.
something?
Not really, because you know what? A lot of situations which we'll come to and talk about when I said I promise you guys also the bad and the
good and the
ugly.
bad, yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
ugly.
And some are horrifying.
Yeah.
In the business that I was more mature and that I can handle a lot of situations a lot better. So I was glad, because unfortunately I have seen so many girls in the circuit that they were in situations they had to take care of the families. They had the chance to leave their smaller towns and poor countries and everything. Didn't finish school. And I just feel like those girls sometimes do not. They have. That's a contra against them, because there's some girls that are street smart. There's some girls that can survive.
Yeah.
But then sometimes when you would see them write something or speak or anything, you know that the education was not behind them. And then people kind of like laugh behind their back.
I definitely don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for people to start, or if you have the right support and if you have parents that have been in the industry or anything like that, I would never speak against it. But I myself, personally, I am very happy that I started late myself, just because for the reasons you mentioned. I wanted the college experience or the university experience, and I think it was better for me as a woman to know my body, to know myself, to know a bit more about myself, because when you're younger, unfortunately, you do tend to, you are, people can sway your mind, and you're very, people can influence you to do and say or partake into things that you don't necessarily want to, but you don't have the courage to speak out and say, no, that's not for me, or, so personally, I think I'm very happy that I started later, that I do have my education. Once again, an education is something you cannot buy. It is always, it's something that you always have, and nobody can take that away from you. Exactly. So I'm very happy about that. But at the same time, I cannot, for any other reason other than my personal experience, say that it is wrong. I do think people and parents should be careful and should at least discuss pros and cons, or have a bit more oversight.
In 10 years or in 20 years, you have a 16-year-old daughter. How would you take the situation when she says, Mom, I want to model?
Well, I think I would, really ask her if this is something that she'd seriously want to do. Having been in the profession myself, I could guide her, or I could definitely be able to say, okay, where we can start and how we can start, which is in a way that is age appropriate.
Yes.
Because I think you can do anything as long as the parents are aware of what's going on, and as long as it stays within a realm of age appropriateness. There's nothing wrong with the industry per se, but you need to, a lot of parents, they'll just,
they say, oh,
there you go.
My daughter's going to be the next Linda Evangelista and Naomi Campbell and everything, and they don't see the dangers of it. So I hope that's what we're going to help you guys with here.
I mean, luckily the climate has changed.
It has changed, but there still are some dangers.
There are still dangers out there.
There's some certain photographers that have certain reputations and everything. And like you said, you were mature, that you weren't pushing the situation. It's funny that you said, I have another good girlfriend of mine, Karina. She used to be the top model for Escada and everything like that. And we've been friends a very long time. And as a lot of new Me Too things came out, some photographers were brought into the spotlight. The kind of like rumors in the business were already out there. Some male models came forward. Everything. We had a discussion, and she was like, have you ever been in a situation? I was like, no, have you? And then I'm wondering why. I don't want to do any kind of, God forbid, any kind of victimizing that is the victim's fault. But I think if you... Number one, I think men like that, and women, believe me, it comes from both sides of the gender. I feel like they, just like in the wild, a lion knows the weakest one in the herd to go after. You know what I'm saying? It's not her fault that he's weak, but I think when they don't have a good support system,
or just a radar for
exactly. But usually they can see if they're young. They'll use that. They'll use that against them. you know, and of course when you're young, if you haven't experienced things and everything, and you don't recognize the situation until it's too late that you're in it.
And that's I mean, I've been very fortunate enough not to be in any precarious situations, but it's because we have that street smart sort of attitude and sort of the radar that I was talking about. There are certain situations that can occur or develop or can slowly develop where you can nip something in the bud, and this is definitely, I completely agree with you, it does not mean for like
no
at
fault
all
of the girls that it's happened to,
at
the
all,
boys
or
that
the
it's
boys
happened
at all, but there are if you are a bit more perceptible, and this goes also for sometimes crime. Sometimes people go on holiday with their cameras slung up back, and you know, you have to move with the city, you have to move with the energy of the city, and that's the same thing in modeling. In a lot of situations, you need to be able to see the whole story, the full story, and just be aware of things. Okay, why isn't that girl going to the party? Why isn't this person?
And see, I was that type of girl.
Yes, you have to read the room, as they say, and sort of. Well, at least I was lucky enough to be able to do that.
Have you had situations that you were a traveling young model and you were in a city? I won't name the city. I won't name the agency. But you were told that you're being considered for a certain campaign or for the next editorial shoot from a photographer, but he'd like to meet with you this evening. You know, go out to dinner, go to a club and everything. And
yeah, I mean, they do. In a particular city, they do that a lot. It's sort of more like
you know what I'm talking
promotion modeling, and it's like, okay,
no, and that was the thing. And there was probably a lot of jobs I lost out on.
Yeah,
but maybe it was innocent.
Again, that comes. Sorry to interrupt. That has to do with comfortability. I think if I have actually met a couple of models that have gone to these parties or have had dinner or have had met the person, I would obviously feel more comfortable, and that it goes back to educating yourself, knowing your environment. If you have, you should do a little bit of, okay, who's the client, who's this photographer, what's going on? Let me actually see if there's work behind.
Do your research.
Yeah.
And then this time and age, when we started, there was like you couldn't Google anyone.
You can Google.
You can Google everything, girls.
Deb? What's it doing?
You hit enter?
What's enter?
Open up your smartphone.
Yeah, now you can, so there's no excuse.
Get you some information is everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
But before, that's why the connection between models was really important, because you had to trust their information and vice versa. You had to build some sort of a network, because your only reliable source of, hey, how do I present myself at the casting, or you've worked for that client before, what are they like, whatever.
But then you have to be careful, because there's the bitches out there that will give you the false information.
Luckily, I've only met good friends, Macon, only good model friends. But yeah, I mean,
but it gets a lot of jealousy out there and everything. But let's get away from the ugly. We got a little bit. We jumped ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no. Well, this is good, because I just wanted to flow, and whatever comes to mind, and that was the next step. But let's go back to when then your mother got you then started. What was your very first job that you booked and got a little money for?
Oh gosh, I think I did something for Veet. I was a featured extra, and we were like on a Mardi Gras parade. Actually, also why I continued with the modeling is because just like in the States at the time in South Africa, you had to pay your own like education. So one of the driving forces was I needed to make money to pay for my education as well. So yeah, I think the Veet Mardi Gras job was one, and they made the whole city of Cape Town, the inner city, they literally set it up Mardi Gras style. We had the feather boas, had the complete look. I think that was one of the biggest jobs the biggest paying one at that time that I remember, which was like really cool, where I had like extra money, paid off some of my university bill and could still keep a bit of extra money. It was like, yes.
Okay, then the main reason why I have you here is because you don't live in South Africa anymore.
No, I
You've
don't.
worked your way to every international modeling city. You still travel a lot. Just
Yeah,
got back
I
from
do.
Helsinki,
Yeah, I did.
even though it was pleasure. But
Yeah,
you know,
so-
you do travel a lot for work. That is one downfall. Girls,
Pros
be
and
ready.
cons. Pros and cons.
I have been. I remember on posting. New York, the first fashion week, 1 down and 7 to go.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have haute couture week in Paris, and then us working in Germany, we have Düsseldorf, and then a Munich.
Where there's
even,
showrooms, and in between you even have all these
showrooms
other
and
things happening
everything.
and
You
shoots.
have
Yeah.
the great, glamorous, elegant shows, but then you could be working in a showroom that is like, hey, any job that pays the bills. Yeah, exactly.
I think the biggest misconception of people actually forget that modeling is a very lonely job.
It is. It is. You're in a plane or in a.
You're basically by yourself all the time, and it's something that a lot of girls don't have the strength. We do interact with other models, but you're by yourself like 90% of the time.
You
You're
are.
traveling by yourself. You're eating by yourself in a hotel. Every time my family and friends are doing something over the weekends, there I am, either in transit, taking a flight, or obviously
Yeah, we're talking about years ago. It's still functioning now, but
just like obviously before this year. But you're from train to plane, but you're by yourself all the time. And fine, you meet people on set, and it's great, and you have a bit of a vibe, but they're not your friends. Some of them become your friends, but at the end of the day, they are still your temporary
Exactly.
work colleagues, and
Yeah.
everyone goes their separate ways.
and you can't wait to see them next season.
Yeah, you're
yeah.
happy to see them, or that sort of thing. Whether it's a shoot, a showroom, a runway, some familiar faces pop up. But at the end of the day, people go their separate ways, and you're by yourself again, taking a train, going to a hotel, going to the next job, and it's something I think in the industry people just never talk about. That's the
Right.
least glamorous part,
Yeah.
and it's not for everybody. I've definitely
it's
seen
not.
a lot of models. Sort of really,
They go in depression.
Yeah, it's
I think
something
that's why
that-
there's a lot of more alcohol.
Yeah.
They're drunk. That they get into drinking more alcohol, and unfortunately, then some girls get into substance abuse because they're. It's not for everybody to be able to be thousands and thousands of kilometers of miles
Yeah,
from your
away from your
family,
family, that's
and
true.
everything. I think what prepared me, my parents moved around a lot. There was one time I went to 6 different schools in 6 different years. So I was always used to being alone, being the lone wolf, being the new girl there that maybe nobody likes me, or I had to like make friends. I was not a shy person.
Yeah.
But then also my personality, I like being alone. I'm one of those people I can, you know me in Paris.
I think we're
you know,
exactly
but
the same. I
Lee
love
and
being by
I,
myself, but I also love like when I'm around people. I just
exactly. Lee and I could be working on the same job with similar clients. Maybe she has to do something else or whatever, but we're sharing an apartment in Paris. We have the time, but I'm like, Lee, I'm going here. We will separate and then we meet back up
Yeah,
at
that's
midnight
true.
in the apartment. Hey, what'd you do? How was your day? How's it
that's
hanging?
That's true.
Everything is not like we had to hang on each other. And I've always been the type of person, even now, I have no problem going to the movies by myself. I'll go sit at a cafe and have me a nice glass of wine. Everybody knows I love my wine. Honey loves her wine. Yeah, you
forgot to pour something for me too. Thanks, Macon. Yeah, but that's true, and it's not something that that everyone can do. You think it'll come easy, but it's not necessarily something that everyone can handle. Besides not seeing your family and friends, it's missing out on parties, events.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think what prepared me is because my hometown is about 5.5 hours from Cape Town. So by the time I also moved to university, we couldn't go home every weekend because the distance was so far. Most of the people could only go home on a long weekend or when it's like a longer university holiday. So I just basically also got used to traveling by myself, being by myself. I mean, of course, I had friends at the time, but it prepares you to to be able to do activities by yourself and just
Exactly.
enjoy your own company.
Yeah, and I have also my own interests, and I think I'm a little stubborn that I just, when somebody else wants to do something that I don't like to do, and then I think also I hit a couple of situations when I first started modeling with little problems with some jealous girls or some mean girls.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that people are so jealous of me, but I can't help it that I'm popular.
Once I get to know somebody, I never shut up. Yeah. You're the same. But
don't be fooled, guys. I'm the
same. Not scared or something, but I think I like to check out the room, listen to what people say, because usually people have one chance to make a first impression. Yeah. Usually, what they tell you or what they show you. Yeah. What did Maya Angelou say? The first
believe if people show you their character, believe them the first time,
or something like that. Yeah, we're paraphrasing. Yeah, but. And that was the thing. So I always used to check out the room, listen to people, and see what kind of vibe I got from them.
Energies are very important.
Very energies. Okay, let's go back. We have to always keep rewinding because you and I could talk for 5 hours. Okay, so we talked about your first job.
Yes.
And you started. Your mother entered you
introduced me
in modeling and everything. And then I assume your first agency was in Cape Town.
Yes, it was. And this was during the golden years. Now everyone goes to Cape Town. And unfortunately, the industry, like everywhere else, the rates have gone down a bit and stuff. But imagine Cape Town a couple of years ago. We won't give away my age. But a couple of years ago. And there were not so many international models that were flying down. But there were still clients that... obviously, because of the change of seasons that we have, we are directly opposite from Europe. So when it's winter in Europe, it's
everybody flies down there to do the bikini shots.
Yeah, there's like an hour time difference, so it's really ideal for European clients to shoot. So we were making good money because also the exchange rate was quite favorable. If you were earning in euros, converted into rands. My first agency was the agency that was linked to the agency I went to sign up for. Yeah. And I was with them for a while. They were also linked to a French agency in Paris, which is how I got to Paris for about 2 months, which was my first...
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Okay, we want to explain that, how agencies are linked to each other. Usually, you will make a contract with your main agency in a city. It's called a mother contract. And then they always work with what they call sister agencies in other countries and other cities. And if those sister agencies look at you and aren't interested in you, then it's almost like a professional football or basketball player. They can get a trade. They can get loaned out to another company, and then you don't make less money. It depends on the country. You can make more money if you move up. If you move up from a smaller country or smaller market where your mother agency is, but then they handle that between each other. They split the commission on your jobs and bookings. So you're loaned out. So it's always good to, even if you're in a small country, a small town, and I even explain that when I was after I was in university, my dad joined a new practice group. He was tired of being in practice on his own. My father was an oncologist, hematologist, and it was just too much work. So he joined a cancer group, and my parents moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And so I was spending a lot of time there. Of course, it's not the biggest modeling market, but there was a woman there that lived there and settled there. I think her husband was working. I don't want to say it, but I believe
remember?
No, I remember where he was, but I don't want to be incorrect, and I don't know if it's okay for me to mention a main corporation company. He was a big exec at FedEx. Okay, so FedEx headquarters or hub is in Memphis, and she's working there. And in her time, as she younger, Terry was also an international model, in the 70s and everything, in the early 80s and everything. And when she settled down with her husband and they were there in Memphis and she started having kids, she still wanted to stay in the industry. She had a small agency there just for a small local thing, but she always kept her contacts internationally. And she had such a good eye at finding girls on the streets, signing them under contract.
Being a scout, basically.
Yeah, I just broke my nail.
Oh, no.
Look, getting all in the conversation, breaking my nail.
passionate
that was a real nail.
You're passionate about it.
And but she had her contacts in other international agencies, from Milan to Hong Kong to London to Paris, everything, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, everywhere that she felt like she could place a girl. And actually, she spoke to me on the street.
Yeah.
I had already been doing modeling, but then once my parents moved to Memphis, and spending time with them, and actually I finished my last year studies in Memphis just because I wanted to change my degree a little bit and didn't want to lose my credits. So I transferred to this other school to get that I could actually finish with 2 full diplomas. Yeah, girl.
Brush your shoulder off.
Girl got the brains behind the.
It's not just the looks.
Yeah, exactly.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
And she spoke to me, and I started modeling with her. And then when I really buckled down, like I said, because I finished my studies early, I had to take on extra classes. I was doing like really full semesters. And then she was like, hey, I'm going to send you to this photographer in Atlanta who's really up and coming. He shot some of the best shots with me. When she shot them, he was like, he got you.
Okay.
He got you.
You're covered
And then
now.
she sent me on a whole tour. I had to visit all these agencies in New York, even though since I was 15, I worked with another agency in New York. She sent me on her connections there, and she sent me on LA. So I signed with the agency in New York and signed with the LA. And for a long time, after I finished college, I was going back and forth.
Yeah.
And then that's unfortunately when my father passed away a little unexpectedly. So I dropped everything in LA. Actually, at the time, I started studying acting also. I've been doing some TV shows. I was actually on the set at Universal Studios on a TV show.
That's exciting.
Yeah, not when you get the call from your mom that your dad died.
Yeah, okay.
So-
Bad timing.
So I was at home with my mother, getting her settled in and everything. And then I went back to New York, and then came the offer of my agency starting to working with these new agencies once the wall fell.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it was after the wall. We're not that old, okay? But it was just in Germany. They had for so long state-run agencies, Kunstlerdienst, if you're from Germany, everything. Independent agencies did not start building up into like the middle and late 90s and early 2000s. In like Berlin and a lot of the cities that were on the Eastern Bloc, the other side. And they were interested in getting more international models.
I mean, you even came here earlier than I did, but I mean, the progression, I mean, I have to say, the progression in Europe's been really cool the last 5-6 years, but it was definitely very difficult to start out here. Even a lot of people at the time that I'd made in the mid 2000s, 2008, when I wanted to come over for the first time, people said there's no way you'd ever work. There's no market for you, just don't even bother. And I ignored them, and I did it anyway.
Exactly.
And probably the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Getting back to what we were talking about, we took a little bit of a break. But there was agencies in Berlin that were then interested. They wanted international models. And I actually came over to Berlin first for a private situation, not private situation. I was filming the second part of a film. Got to know a lot of people. And then when I got back, then it got a little bit more serious. My agency offered me to go to Germany. So I came over here and I went to the agency that they hooked me out with. But then I went and made appointments to other agencies and actually ended up going with another agency.
Okay.
And so how did you get in Munich and start with your agency?
Pretty similar. I actually came to Munich to visit my first German boyfriend at the time. And, although a lot of people discouraged me from coming over and said this market wouldn't work for me, I said, you know what, I have nothing to lose. So I went with my book, the book that I had from my South African agency, and also just walked into one of the nearest agencies. I had looked up a couple. I mean, the internet was definitely slowly getting along. So I did look up a couple of agencies and decided, you know what, I'm going to do a walk-in, present my book, present myself, and see if they would work with me. And one of the agencies did. 2 at the time said that I wasn't right for their agency, which, like I said, is perfectly fine. Not every agency that you walk into is going to want you, or it's not necessarily going to fit. Don't take it personal. It just is what it is. That's part of the business. That's what I did as well. And that's where they helped me out with my working visa, my year working visa. And as I mentioned, I think at the beginning of the video, although I had a year working visa, I could only like travel to Europe every 3 months, or 3 months working, 3 months out of the
Because
country.
at that time, it was probably you had a student visa.
No, I had a working visa, but European law is you can only stay in a country for 3 months at a time. Otherwise, beyond the 3 months, you have to pay the taxes. And because I wasn't a resident at the time, I had to leave after 3 months.
Okay, I want to get back to walk-ins, but now that we're on visas, and I'm going to explain because I think because it's between two different countries.
Yeah.
Because when I came here, I was given, you have to have a company that wants to work with you or promise you work for you to apply to get a work visa.
Yes.
And but you can't have worked yet. But to get a resident visa, you have to show that you can pay your own health insurance.
It's a different category.
Yeah,
different
it
category.
goes back and forth and everything. So actually,
as you mentioned as well, the Americans and Africans have totally different visa requirements. Just so that you guys know. So back in the time, was completely possible, and of course they changed the visa rules almost like every second year. So. At the time that I got my work visa, the type I had, I could only work for 3 months at a time.
Okay. Well, once I decided to stay longer than the original 3 months and stay, then we went to get my full residency visa and then get my work visa, and then that's always over 2 years. That's for Germany. Okay, let's talk about. I guess I can explain this being American because I know all my European girlfriends to try to go to New York and work. Basically, with New York, what happens is that an agency will, when they want you and want to work with you, they will sponsor you. It costs, last time I heard or checked, between $1,200 and $1,600 to get your working visa, and then basically, unless you can qualify yourself as a student, then you're allowed to work one type of job, and then you can qualify yourself as just your job is modeling and everything. So you get it. It's a little bit easier, a little bit cheaper if you somehow get. Even if you, I know a girlfriend of mine that was a model from Austria. She actually got accepted to Lee Strasberg Acting Academy in New York.
Oh, wow.
And even though she was paying for that privately and costed a lot of money, with her parents helped her with, that was still her student visa, then it was easier for her to model.
To extend it,
to
not
model.
extend it, but to
model because she had the student visa and everything. It doesn't mean you have to be accepted to Columbia University or NYU or one of the fashion, FIT or one of the fashion institutes there. There's other ways you can do it. But if you want to go strictly on work visa, it used to be the qualifications, and you have to have at least 12 international tear sheets, so that the agency can prove that you're a very good working international model. They pay. Always their lawyers. They have lawyers set up for that, for immigration and get your working visas. They will pay that. But believe me, you.
It's more of a loan.
It's more of a loan. More of a loan.
Let's just call it what it is. It's more of a loan.
As soon as you get that next big job, they're going to take that out of that.
So
but
it gets deducted from the work that they provide.
But they're willing to pay that when they see the potential in you. Yeah. So usually if you can go to New York, and I know a lot of New York agencies still do open call. You just need to save up you a little money wherever you've been working. If you have enough tear sheets, you have enough tests, you tested with some good photographers that have also been published in magazines, that if you save up you a little money, 1 week is all you need in New York. You can hit all the major agencies where you think that you fit in or have given you good response or resonance. And then you set those appointments, and you should know by the end of the week who wants you, who's willing to finance you and bring you there and everything. And that also happens for Paris, Milan, London, Cape Town.
So,
some girls will say, okay, I think I might be good for the Asian market, and they'll go over to Singapore or to Hong Kong. It's the same thing. Agencies will take care of everything, and that's another warning. If you start working with the agency and it's like, we can bring you big out. We need $3,000, 3,000 euros. A reputable agency does not want any money from you. Of course,
Not
for maybe 6 months you'll be working free
Yes,
because,
yes,
like we
yes.
said, that's a loan.
Well, they definitely don't want it upfront, and it's the way a reputable agency should explain to you what the cost would involve in either procuring this visa, your stay, and what costs are involved in them sponsoring your visa or sponsoring your work program or your modeling visa. But none of them are going to ask you for money upfront. That is something that should be a red flag, something that the girls should research themselves and you know, read through the contracts, very important, and ask yourself, does it make sense? Maybe in the new day and age, there are some certain costs that are involved. We're not saying there aren't costs involved, but you need to ask whether your own agency, a friend, a model, to help you read through the contract and just understand, does this cost make sense? Or is it basically a scam? I mean, if they're already asking you for test shoots or setting you up with a photographer, that is also very normal, but they won't ask you for the model, front the money up front. If it's something they decide to, you know, if they decide to build you up, then they'll probably foot the bill initially, and they will then get the money back from the jobs that you
Exactly. That means if they bring you to the city, you're playing fight. You will probably be in some little model apartment. It depends on how big or small it is, how many girls you share it with. I can tell you some stories. A couple of model apartments where I was.
Probably for another video.
I just remember one model apartment. We could not shower with the light in the bathroom on because the electricity was so badly wired. If you had the light on when you showered, as soon as you touched the water faucet knobs, you got a little bit of a shock. So everybody showered in the dark. And I mean, I've been in old apartments that have been renovated since the 70s with such high flocati, deep shag rugs.
Moral of the story is, don't expect like a villa the first time round or all the time. Just
five-star hotel.
There are some good ones. I must say, South Africa, we've got some good model apartments, but you'll still get some funny. There's always something where the models themselves are just not very clean, or whether you're packed in there with three different
models. And be
models
very careful. Always have a way to lock your stuff up because bitches will steal.
Stuff do get stolen at times. All kinds of stuff. Protect yourself. Be careful. Model apartments are not always beautiful villas that you see in these casting shows. Not a reality.
Germany's Next Home or America's Next Home, where they have these big lofts. No, you have like 30 square meters with 3 girls. You're in a bunk bed. You're in a bunk bed with some bitch over you that ate some chili is farting the whole night.
So yeah. Yeah, I actually wanted to say something on that. Also, as a model, you can protect yourself if you have saved up a bit of money and you don't want the agency or you don't want your loan to be that big. You can also purchase the ticket yourself, arrange your own accommodation. Most of us, if we have friends in London, Paris, wherever, we also crash on couches and stay with our friends, and that's just a way to sort of balance out your cost and keeps you. It's not a bad thing to be a bit in debt with your agency, because then they sort of make a bit more of an effort to, you know, get you some work, get you some work. But if you feel like, hey, I can do this by myself, there's at least a certain aspect of this travel thing that I can do myself, then just do it. You know, find your own accommodation, book the cheapest flight. You know, that's another thing. Sometimes they'll just book the first flight they see, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I found another, you know, cheaper flight for 200 euros cheaper, which makes a big difference, you know?
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. Try to trust in your agency, but just don't take everything that they lay on the table for you, because then you are in debt. Then you're working 6 months free. Believe me, if you do a job for 2,000 euros, they're not going to take the whole 2,000 euros. They'll leave you 500 bucks that you can eat and everything, but the rest of the money is paying off books costs. Your books costs. It was
back then, I mean, I guess now everything's just like technical. But
no, but you know what? For a while,
I still like books. So
I still like books. I still love having my good old mappa, my model book on my arm.
It's a bit heavy though, but I still love. I love the layout.
I love the layout. I love the flipping through it when you sit there with a designer and they flip through it. It's like old school. For a while, it was a trend that the agencies were giving girls iPads and everything. even on my own iPad, but then you saw that everybody making it big. They want to see a big 9 by 12
That's true. That's true. And also, like the pixels can never cover how it looks in print.
Exactly.
My personal preference is I do enjoy viewing my pictures in the book myself.
Me too, and I love every couple of months rearranging with new things and laying everything out here on the sofa and everything, because things have to tell a story and you have to go from here to here. Some things are like old and you're like, oh, I love this picture, but I got something better new, and you always have to update your book and everything. Actually, that could be a good video, how to arrange your model book.
Yeah, it's quite important. Even if it's in digital, you still need to have a flow.
Yeah. A lot of girls don't know how to arrange it, and a lot of times I would be okay when I have my agency arranged it, and then you also have to know how to arrange your book for every casting, because every client is different. Every client is different, and they want something different, and you have to know your client, do a little research, and know what pictures you have in your collection that they will be amazed when they see in your book.
There's no point, for example, with going to a sports casting if you only have fashion pictures in your book. That's not
that makes no sense. If you're going to for commercial, if you're going to for a commercial for some skincare, you don't want all this fashion when you're fully made up. You need some naturals in there because they want to see your true skin.
Okay, guys, so that was the end of part 1. Please subscribe and please turn on your notification so you know exactly when part 2 is coming, because there's a lot more information and advice coming to you. I hope to see you again. Bye.